In the last few videos, we looked at the basics of web services. We understood the key terminology which are associated with web services. In this video, we will take a quick look at the different types of web services, kinds of web services, groups of web services, however you'd want to call them. SOAP and REST. One thing to remember is the fact that SOAP and REST are not really comparable. It's not really an apple to apple comparison. REST defines an architectural approach, whereas SOAP poses restrictions on the format of the XML which is exchanged between your service provider and the service consumer. Let's get started with SOAP. SOAP stands for Simple Object Access Protocol. Actually, it no longer stands for Simple Object Access Protocol. It's no longer an abbreviation anymore. SOAP is just like request, response, any of those terms, SOAP is just a term. SOAP defines a specific way of building web services. In SOAP, we use XML as the request exchange format. So I have a Facebook application which is talking to the To-Do application. Facebook is sending an XML request and To-Do application is sending back an XML response. An example of a request is shown below. Get course details request. So this is using an XML. Is this SOAP? Are Facebook and To-Do applications communicating using SOAP? Nope. This is not sufficient to be SOAP. Important thing is SOAP defines a specific XML request and response structure. If you're using SOAP, then you have to use this structure. So you have to create a SOAP envelope which contains a SOAP header and a SOAP body. The header contains meta information like authentication, authorization, signatures and things like that. Body is where you put the real content of your request or your response. So if you are actually saying you are creating a SOAP web service, then you have to adhere to this request and response format. You should use a SOAP envelope with a header and a body in the request and the response. So if you're using SOAP web services, then Facebook and To-Do application have to communicate using a SOAP XML request and a SOAP XML response. An example response is shown in here. So you have a SOAP envelope, you have a header. Here the header is empty. You have a body with the content of the response. When we look at the big picture, SOAP defines a format for your request and the response. SOAP does not pose any restrictions on your transport. You can either use HTTP or MQ. So you can communicate over the web, over the internet, or you can use queues to communicate as well. And in SOAP, the service definition is typically done using something called Web Service Definition Language, WSDL, Web Service Definition Language. A WSDL defines the endpoint, basically where your service is exposed at. It defines all the operations that are exposed, get all course details, add a new course, delete a course. So what are all the operations that are allowed? And also it specifies the request and response structure. If I want to get all the details of a course, how do I send a request? If I want to delete a course, how do I send a request? And what kind of response can I expect? WSDL is the service definition for your SOAP services. We will talk about all the details of a WSDL later in the course when we talk about SOAP web services in detail. In summary, SOAP is all about adhering to the SOAP XML structure, adhering to the envelope, header, and the body. Once you have your request and response in that structure, then you can say you are developing SOAP web services. Now that we talked a lot about the SOAP web services, in the next video, we would be talking about REST web services. Until then, bye-bye.